Hi, welcome to Baby Bloom Nutrition. I'm Yaffi Lvova, registered dietitian and nutritionist and owner of Baby Bloom Nutrition and Toddler Test Kitchen. And this is Nap Time Nutrition. And today I'm so excited to have single mom nutritionist Melissa Vasikauskas on with me. And we're going to be a little salty.
Yes, we are. Hello, everybody.
So we've been connecting on Instagram because we follow the same kind of philosophies. I'm focused more on pediatric, and sometimes you post about pediatric stuff, but you're more about right now supporting single moms, and that's super important. I don't see a whole lot of platform for that, so that's really cool.
Yeah, I mean, especially I know you're talking about like the philosophy that we share. I speak from a single mom perspective, but all the same kinds of stuff, It's interesting. When I first started as single mom nutritionist, I was expecting to hook up with a whole bunch of single moms and be a nutrition counselor for them. And I would say like 50% of my clients are single moms, but I have married moms. I have single women who like maybe grew up in a split household, who had a mom and a dad's house, and they just like see me talking about that. And they think the feedback I get a lot is, oh, like this is somebody who understands what I went through as a child. So I have like single childless women who maybe came from split homes, but either way, it's interesting where the journey takes us.
It really is. And I never saw myself being a non-diet, anti-diet dietitian. I actually thought I was going to help people lose weight. And now I think a lot of us started out there, but you learn as you go. And I mean, you have a great post right now up on Instagram about in the left-hand column is someone trying to lose weight and looking at their shrinking waistline. And the other side is more meaningful indicators of health. And so that's a lot of what we teach is that health isn't found on the scale. And sometimes when you incorporate lifestyle factors that impact your health in a positive way, it could come with weight loss, but it might not. There are a lot of factors to contribute to it. So focusing only on weight is limiting. It doesn't give us a lot of information.
Right. And the ironic thing about it is that when we focus on weight, we start to engage in behaviors that are very unhealthy.
It's true. And looking at it, I was talking to someone earlier about how when we, a lot of our movement comes across as it's okay to be big, but the overarching idea is that regardless of your size, it doesn't indicate that you're healthy. So someone could be bigger and healthy, and someone could be smaller and not healthy. And so when we just assume that size dictates health, we could be missing a whole lot. I mean, someone who is a quote unquote healthy BMI could have some real issues that they're overlooking because I must be fine because I'm thin. And that's also an issue.
Right.
Yeah.
100%. It's the culture that we live in. There's lots of people who maybe struggle with like maybe drug addiction, and maybe they're thin, but we walk past them on the street. We don't think anything of it. We think, oh, that person's healthy because they're thin, but really they're not. And we could see a person in a larger body who is totally healthy, completely healthy biomarkers, mentally healthy, all of those things. And we might look at that person and say, oh, they're larger, they're not healthy. When really those two people, our ideas of their health status are completely flip-flopped.
Right. Yeah. And there were two moments in my life that really impacted my direction with nutrition. One being when I complimented someone on his weight loss and it turned out he had colon cancer. And the other being when I watched a friend finish, her name was Diana. She's also a dietitian now, but she crossed the finish line at Ironman, Arizona. And there were people significantly ahead of her who I would have thought could have used some weight loss counseling. And here they are finishing Ironman.
I could never do that.
I couldn't do that either. And so it's important to know that it's just more complex. And so the previous generation, bringing this into our conversation today, which we've titled Mind Your Own Body, the previous generation a lot really is stuck on that idea that weight indicates health. And a lot of our parents have done a lot of crazy diets, like cabbage soup diet, the grapefruit diet. I mean, the list is unending, the way that they've tortured their meal times.
Yeah.
And so sometimes that comes across in body comments and food comments to us or to our kids. And that's where we need to set boundaries. So I've done an Nap Time Nutrition on setting boundaries, and we can talk a little bit about how to set boundaries with our parents where this stuff is concerned. But we are going to get a little bit snarky, because even if you set those boundaries ahead of time, even if you set everything up for success, you just don't know what someone else considers okay, or what they're just used to saying without thinking. And so we need to address these comments in a way that show our kids and show ourselves, by the way, where our values are and what we believe in as far as health goals and nutrition, and reinforce for our kids that that is not the way that you are being raised. That's not what we're buying into, and you don't need to worry about that.
Yeah, and I usually tell my clients too, I think we tend to get really caught up on the boundary itself and making sure that the boundary is perfect and that everybody's respecting the boundary. I try to invite my clients to take a little bit of a step back, look at boundaries a little bit different. The boundaries are for you. They're not for the person. So I know that this is a little bit hard to wrap your head around, but when you're establishing a boundary and you're thinking of setting a boundary as a practice of like self-advocacy, I always tell people let's just pretend, for example, you're at work, like you're working in an office with lots of people, and one of your coworkers starts to like harass you, for example. What would you do? And almost everybody says like, oh, I would say something back, or I would go to HR or go to my supervisor. And I always tell people, okay, everything you just said, those were examples of self-advocacy. You were standing up for yourself. When it comes to food and nutrition, for some reason, the concept of self-advocacy goes out the window. We're like, oh, okay, I should be dieting. I should be doing that. I need to watch my plate. Oh, that person made a comment. No. Where's that voice? Stand up and speak up for yourself. And whether or not the person in question respects the boundary, it's not so much about that as it is about you listening to yourself stand up for yourself and being confident in that and showing your children you could stand up for yourself. You can stay true to yourself. Whether or not this person respects that, or if they're offended by it or they don't like it, that's their problem. It's not your problem. So yeah, it's a little bit about the other person, but not so much as it is about yourself.
I really love that, because the big thing that we show our kids when we raise them is that you are in control of yourself. You're in control of your body. You're in control of your reactions. You can't control what someone else is going to say or do. You can only control how you react to it. And by showing that, by leading by example, by standing up for yourself when someone makes a comment, we're demonstrating that for our kids. And so whether regardless of what the comment is, regardless of if it's a comment about you buying formula at Target and someone thinks you should be breastfeeding, none of their business, or whether it's at a family dinner and it's one of your parents making a comment, it's great to show not yourself, as you mentioned, and your kids what it is to stand up for yourself. And then the message comes secondary. I'm a firm believer that the loudest message comes from home. And if you are eating with your kids at the table and you're spending time having family meals together, the message they get from you at that moment at your table and in the home environment is going to be so much louder, and it's going to stick more. But that doesn't mean that there isn't a good way to approach unwelcome comments outside of the house.
Yeah, 100%. I always tell people that too. Kids are a lot smarter than we give them credit for. They're very smart, and the positive message that makes them feel good, that they feel like they're welcomed and they're loved and that they're able to thrive under, that's the message that they're going to naturally adhere to and take on as their own identity as they grow up. I mean, we could think about this for ourselves when we were about the adult in your life who was the most caring and the most compassionate, the adult who you went to for advice. There's probably most of what that person imparted onto you that you probably hold true to this day. And the people who made you feel bad, who didn't make you feel good, although it maybe left some lasting trauma or negative thoughts, we tend to side as children with the parent who makes it, or the adult who makes us feel the best. So it can be tricky too, to get really, really hung up on, oh, my mom said this at the dinner table. I'm afraid that my daughter's gonna, whatever. as long as the message at home, by and large, is a positive one, a stable one, you're demonstrating the self-advocacy. Another thing too, it's only a matter of time until our children go out into the real world and they go to school and the kids start talking about diets because their parents are talking about diets. It's only a matter of time. So it's inevitable. So, our kids are going to come in contact with diet culture. There's just no way around it. We can protect them as much as we can. We can, equip them as much as we can. But at some point, they're going to come in contact with it. And the only thing we could do is just, what we're doing, just prepping them, keeping the environment at home healthy, the conversations at home healthy. And like you said, that home is the strongest message.
Yeah. And I think that's a really important point because we as parents often try to create a little bubble around our kids. And of course you want to do that. And your home, by all means, should be a bubble free from this diet talk and negative body image talk and bashing yourself in any other way, by the way. But they are going to come in contact with this stuff at some point. And so if you're prepared through these conversations, then that's the best way to be. So I really appreciate that point as well.
Yeah.
Okay, so just to give some when you're sitting down, let's just say you're sitting down at a big family meal. Yeah, I mean, we're still very much in lockdown over here in Arizona. So this is a very theoretical situation at the moment for the past year, but we're sitting down all together and someone makes a comment about how something on the table isn't slenderizing or thinning or not very healthy. There are ways to handle that. So ahead of time, we can say, hey, we don't talk about our body shape or size. We don't talk about food in negative ways. But sometimes people are just so used to flinging this stuff around as conversation fodder. It just comes out. And so in the moment, so let's say we're in that situation. In the moment, what can you say?
In the moment, oh gosh, this happens to me all the time.
Yeah.
Ironically, right? So typically, like when I'm at a table and the adults are speaking like that, I have a 6-year-old daughter. I'll turn to my 6-year-old daughter, and it's depending on the comment. Sometimes I'll say, "That's so silly. What is she talking about?" And we'll laugh it off, And you're kind of getting to at the same time, sending a message to the adult, like, "Remember, we don't talk about that," and then to the child, like, circumventing it and saying, haha, that's so silly, right? We don't talk like that. Like, what does that mean? Fattening. Oh, that's silly. My daughter's at the point now where like the word chubby is funny and she'll walk around and she'll be like, look how chubby my belly is. Ha 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 ha. And just like being silly about it. I'm like, yes, this is how we're supposed to think about these words, that's not a bad thing to have, chub on your stomach. It's totally normal. So humor is one way to circumvent it. Sometimes, I'll teach my clients to say, especially for oneself. So I'll give the example for the adult and then talk about how we can maybe talk about it for the child. So whenever there's like adult conversation of diet talk going around, I typically tell my adult clients to say something to the effect of, I've been working really hard on learning how to accept my body the way it is, and these comments feel like a setback. Can we talk about something else? So that tends to go over well for the adults. If it's happening in front of a child, we can kind of twist it and say something a little bit similar, like, these types of comments can really lead to people being dissatisfied with their body, and I tried to prevent that in my household. Can we change the topic and talk about something else? Those are a few ideas.
Yeah, I think the redirection is great, but I think it's also great the way that you address the comment head on, because just deflecting, at some point our kids are really going to pick up on the deflection, and that might alone send a message that is really inconsistent with what we're trying to teach. We really want them to understand what these comments are so that they can come from a strong perspective when they're responding to them, when they're at school. I like to really say, if someone makes some comment about something being fattening or whatever, I'll say, wow, but it's so delicious. And I like having it with this dip. And doesn't it go so well with that, fill in the blank other food? Because the thing is that you very rarely eat one food on its own. There's usually some kind of side with it.
Right. That's good. That's a good way to do it too.
Yeah, unless it's like pizza, which of course can be had on its own because pizza. But yeah, it's good to just remember that we have food in a context of a daily life, but in the context of a meal as well. Like, oh, that fried chicken wasn't so slenderizing. Great. You know what? It tasted awesome. And when's the last time you made it? And do you remember the recipe? When can we have that again? And I think it would really taste good with some Brussels sprouts, because I really like the balance of the sweetness. This fried chicken had some kind of sweetness in it that was delicious. I don't know. And a balance of the savory or the crunch of a fresh green bean, just get across a different idea as opposed to the nutritional composition of the meal. Talk about other aspects, how it makes you feel, a good memory or something.
Right. I like that redirection too. And also for a word like slenderizing, like if somebody says, oh, this isn't slenderizing, you can also attack the word specifically. You can say, what's so bad about not being slender? Because that puts it in the person, now it's in her court or his court, whoever said that. Right now, this person has to come up with why it's bad to not be slender. And you could just watch the person totally fall apart. We said we were going to be salty.
It's true. No, I see that going a completely terrible direction that I would be unable to swim out of in my family. But
some people, right. So when somebody says, oh, that's fattening, you could say, what's bad about being fat? But that people can engage with that, then you could get into the whole being fat is unhealthy and but let them trip over it, let them have to deal with the words coming out of their mouth, and you just deflect it. What's so bad about not being slender? What's so bad about being fat? What's so bad about not being stick thin? What's the big deal? And let them have to face themselves, right? Then they have to kind of, no pun intended, look at themselves in the mirror and decide, what's so bad about different body sizes.
Right. It's true. It's true. You got to kind of know your audience with some of this. So, take the temperature in the room and think about who's around and what they can handle and what they've learned. And but I think that's great. Like, it's kind of like the adult version of I'm rubber and you're glue. And so I think it's great to just bring it up in front of someone's face, and to also show your kids, like, people come in different shapes and sizes, and you know what? Skinny people like fried chicken too. Everybody likes fried chicken.
Everybody likes fried chicken, and it's good. It's good. It's delicious. It's nourishing. There's lots of positive things to the fried chicken, and that's fine. It's welcome in this house.
Yeah, my favorite focus, just because before I got into nutrition, I studied comparative religions. And so I'm very big on cultural connections with things and how culture relates. And so I always like to deflect in that direction, because it can bring up fun childhood memories, oh, this fried chicken is fattening. Oh, do you remember the first time you had fried chicken? Who were you with? Do you remember what it tasted like? Yeah, I mean, that's not as salty. Maybe the fried chicken was salty, but
no, the response is not as salty. No.
Yeah, the response is not as salty, but I think that's a gentle way to bring it back and be like, that's not how we talk to kids.
Right.
Here's how we're going to talk about it.
I know, right? And another thing too, children, when we say the words like fattening, slenderizing, describing foods as like those types of words, those are kind of like abstract concepts, like the word healthy, unhealthy, slenderizing, fattening. Those are very abstract. Like, what does that mean? A child doesn't know what that means. Children don't develop the ability to think abstractly until about age 12. So those messages can be really confusing, especially if the adult is speaking of like slenderizing as like a positive or a negative thing. It can really confuse the child. So I like the redirection and just, like when do you remember the first time you had fried chicken? What do you like to eat it with? I think that that's a good way to keep it really simple, so that the child doesn't start to kind of trip over maybe like the moral ties that the adult might be struggling with.
Right. Yeah, we talk about that a lot with morals and foods, and putting morals on kids where foods are concerned. We try to stay away from that a lot, because I mean, I've done a nutrition. This is the kind of stuff that I have to edit out for the podcast when I trip over myself. When we talk to kids about nutrition, we want to avoid those abstract ideas, just for that reason that you mentioned, that we don't want to call foods good and bad, because you know what, it tastes good or it tastes bad. That's as far as good and bad with foods go.
Right.
Because there's a context for everything. When you say that a chocolate chip cookie is bad, but then you send them to grandma's house and they make chocolate chip cookies together, there's nothing about that that's bad. I could write essays on all about that that's good. Right. So it's not okay to expect kids to take that concept and to fully unpack it and understand it from every angle. But what you mentioned also is a good point, is that it might fly over their heads. And if we get too into it, either at the table or in our own heads, fixating on it, that could work against us.
Yeah. Yes, definitely. Yeah. Keeping it simple. You know, I think we're getting triggered too, because we come from that. So it could be triggering us a lot too. And we can get a little bit hysterical maybe sometimes and really worried, but keeping it simple for the kids. And, you know, that's one of the things that's hard about this work, especially as this generation, the adults in this generation, breaking this generational pattern. We have it specifically tough. I think it's tough for anybody who's breaking a toxic cycle in their family, because you're going up against the generation who is trying to keep it alive, keep it going. You are right in the middle of that, trying to stop it and dealing with that. And at the same time, you're trying to create a new narrative for your family and your kids and your household. And while both of those things are going on, you're also doing the inner work within yourself to reframe your own thoughts and heal from whatever damage might have come from growing up in that previous generation. So I always tell people, when you are breaking toxic cycles and doing this type of work, I always say you're doing God's work, because it's not easy. I mean, every time you turn around, there's something else that you need to deal with. So kudos to everybody listening to this and doing this work.
It's true. It's so true. And the previous generation might really dig their heels in on making this shift, because they have invested so much time and energy into these concepts that now we're coming along and saying, oh, well, that was never right to begin with. You wasted your life. Sorry you had to eat so much cabbage soup.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. You know, that's the thing with dieting and restriction. It tends to, over time, it becomes like an identity, and it's just, you know, we're not talking badly of our parents or the previous generation, but there's only so much level of awareness that's even happening to begin with. And that's another important thing to keep in mind too. The goal here is not necessarily to change their minds. And sometimes that helps when you take that pressure off of yourself. But when you're creating that new narrative for your family and your kids, remember, when the other adults are in the room from the previous generation, there's only so much capacity that they have to even understand what this new narrative is about. And they're dealing with their own stuff. So that helps too sometimes to kind of take a step back and remember, these comments that are being made are not personal. They are just projections of their own internal struggles that they've been dealing with for literally decades.
That is such a good point. We're not out to change minds. We're out to protect ourselves and our kids.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
That's fantastic. And that's why sometimes taking the gentle approach by being proactive with these conversations might not work, just because a single conversation before a family meal or a holiday is not going to do much to battle decades and decades of this way of thinking and this fighting and the money spent on various programs and pills and that crazy machine that just shakes you around a lot. Like, yeah. I kind of want to get on one of those anyway, because they look like fun. Just for fun.
I know, right? Ooh, that looks fun.
Yeah. So it's good. It's good to be gentle, but it's also good to remember that we only have so much power.
Yeah, we only have so much power. And sometimes you do have to be a little tough. You know, every Friday, I wanted to share this. Every Friday, my mom picks up my daughter from school for me, because I have clients. And every single Friday, my mom will take my daughter to Dunkin' Donuts to get chocolate munchkins and chocolate milk, which is fine. And then my mom brings her back here, and she always comes back with like 20 munchkins. And which is fine, you know, whatever. That's what you want to do. So my daughter sits here and she eats them. And she eats one right after the other, one right after the other. And my mom always makes a comment at some point, you know, I can't believe you're still eating those. Oh my goodness, you're going to eat all those? And finally, I just turned to her and I said, you cannot buy the 6-year-old munchkins and then make comments about her eating them. If she's going to eat them, they're in front of her, she's going to eat them. No more comments about it. And my mom was like, wow, you've certainly changed. Yeah, I have. So this is how we do it here. I said, if buying munchkins and her eating them is triggering to you, then don't buy the munchkins. But it's not fair to the child to make all these comments about this little kid eating munchkins, making her feel bad about the fact that you gave her the munchkins. Enough, stop. So yeah, sometimes the temperature goes up.
Yeah, no, that's a great story to really illustrate the point. And with kids, they don't choose their food. They choose from what's been purchased for them. There are not 6, 7, 8-year-olds using their allowance money and going to the store by themselves and buying a bunch of candy bars. I mean, yeah, maybe when we were little, we did that. I certainly remember going through a drive-through with my friends on our bikes, but this day and age, that's not happening. The kids are eating what we have purchased for them. So giving them grief about what they're choosing to eat is really pointless because we're the ones who put it on the table.
Right.
And the truth is that those munchkins, she's enjoying the munchkins. I would enjoy some munchkins. I would enjoy some right now.
I know, right? Me too.
Yeah, but the thing is that with kids, it all comes to giving a variety, modeling how we can eat and how we can enjoy eating, and then just letting them do their thing. And I love the expression, look up, not down. Look up at your child's face, not down at their plate. And that's also something you can say if someone makes a comment in front of your child. Hey, we're doing things differently. We like to look at faces instead of plates.
That's a good one too.
Yeah.
Faces, not plates. Mm-hmm. That's like quick and sharp. It gets the point, drives the point home, and really just establishes the rule and the boundary at the table. That's good.
Yeah, and that's what it is. Our kids want us to stand up for them. Mm-hmm. Sometimes even the child who is strong is not going to be able to stand up against a grandparent bully. And the grandparent doesn't see that they're bullying. They don't know that. I mean, there are so many stories about parents who take their kids to Weight Watchers or what have you in order to try to fix what they believe is a problem. And if you're interested in that, go look at the segment Child on a Diet, because I covered that extensively, the problems with putting kids on diets. But the thing is that when that happens, you become the child's bully. So it's not about what's happening in the playground. It's about what's happening in the home. But that same concept can happen at a relative's house where someone becomes a bully and they don't intend to bully the child. They have a positive idea that they're trying to get across. They're trying to educate them in health. And we just do things differently. You and I, Melissa, and anyone who's listening, we're going to take the bull by the horns, do it differently.
And sometimes that's a good boundary to set. Just say, we do things differently. We don't talk like that. That's it. We do things differently in my family. Yeah. Period.
Yeah. Oh, I think something else that's fun is if someone makes a negative comment about someone else, either something they ate or a change in size or even a fashion choice. I mean, anything that's just really superficial. You could be like, I wonder what they studied in school. So what do they do for a career?
Oh, that's a good one. Completely change the subject. Mm-hmm. That's it. Yeah. I mean, changing the subject is a boundary. Completely just not even acknowledging it and talking about something else completely. Like, oh, by the way, how did that thing go last week? Just completely. And the other person may or may not realize that you're protecting yourself with a boundary. But again, the other person doesn't matter, right? It's about standing up for yourself, doing what you need to do for you. And whether or not that person respects the fact that you changed the subject or respects whatever boundary you put down, it's inconsequential to what you're trying to accomplish for yourself. And that's just hearing yourself practice standing up for yourself. That's how you build confidence. And how we get over all this generational trauma that had toppled on top of us.
It's true. And it really is generational trauma. This is food. This is how we feed our bodies. And we should have a variety of different food that we enjoy, but we should enjoy it. It doesn't have to be, there are studies that are run all the time on here's what happens if you have 800 calories a day on a formula. Yeah, who wants to do that? Nobody wants to do that. I mean, and
Right.
these studies, they're there for a purpose. They prove some kind of biological purpose or process, but that's not how we eat. That's not how we interact with the world. And food is delicious, and we're meant to enjoy delicious food.
Right.
And
Right.
enjoying a variety of delicious food leads to health.
Mm-hmm. And that's healthy. You know, food is culture, it's tradition, it's nostalgia. There's emotions, which is okay. You know, I think our culture also demonizes emotional eating. It's not necessarily a bad thing. Food is emotional, and that's a healthy thing. So, yeah,
Right.
just totally changing completely the narrative and all of the trauma that we've been carrying forever, you know, turning into something positive. That's what this is all about. And setting the boundaries, whether it's salty, whether it's more gentle, whatever the temperature in the room is, that's what you're doing every day. And the next generation is going to be so much better off.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. And that was really a great way to sum up our major point. There are ways that you can be proactive in your house to create a happier narrative around food. And I talk about this stuff all the time. I mean, you'll find me on Instagram at Toddler Test Kitchen, and I cook with kids, and you can garden with kids, and you can play food-based games with kids. If you're not following kid.food.explorers, she's got a whole lot of fun ideas about playing with food. And of course, kids want to play. Kids want that opportunity to explore and use their natural curiosity to explore things. And when you talk about where a food's from, or a cultural memory or a personal memory of a particular food, that all helps to shift that narrative to something positive. And we can
Right.
also model that in front of people who aren't quite there. If they're not getting the message, we don't talk about this in front of kids, then showing them how to shift the conversation by doing it in front of them can maybe help them get on board, and maybe even they'll get a little bit curious.
Yeah, that's a really great point. That's really great. Keeping it positive. You know, that's the name of the game. Just keeping it positive. When the negative conversation comes up, just turning it positive. Yeah, I think that you're right. That did sum it up pretty good.
Amazing. Yeah. Okay, so where can people find you?
Yeah, so you can find me on Instagram at single.mom.nutritionist. That's my handle, and I'm mainly on Instagram. I'm thinking about starting up a Facebook group. I made it, but I'm not quite in there yet. So that's my 2021 project.
I hear that. We all have goals, right?
Right.
I think my goal in 2021 is to just not.
Not have a goal.
I was so productive in 2020. I just need to
I just want
roll
to
with
zen
it.
out. I just want to zen out and just
Zen out. Yeah.
Mhm.
Well, thank you everyone for joining us. And thanks so much, Melissa, for joining me on this. It was awesome to finally talk to you.
I know. Thank you for having me. This is a long time. We were overdue for this conversation.
We were, but I had to have the right subject come up that was perfect for you.
All in perfect timing.
Yeah. All right. Well, see you all at the next Nap Time Nutrition. Yeah, usually I would say this is every Tuesday, but meh, it
It's
happens
Monday.
when it happens. Yeah. We're just rolling with it. We're just rolling with it. But I'm on YouTube at Nap Time Nutrition, and Libsyn, Stitcher, blah, blah, etc. So I'll see you next time. And if you have any comments or questions or topic suggestions, I would love to hear them. So email me at yaffi@babybloomnutrition.com, or hit my DMs on Instagram. That's probably the easiest way to get me. Thank you so much.
Bye. Thank you.